morning. Monday. How to be your own publicist, session 2. Coming up shortly, about 10 minutes away. Letting everyone wake up. Grab a coffee, grab a tea, pencils and pens, everything you need. Got some great screens for this one. If you're on and you can hear my voice, let me know how it sounds to you, making sure you get all those technical things squared away. Coming up at the top of the hour. morning, good morning. How to get started 3 or 4 minutes from now. How to be your own publicist. Yes, let's go. Should be a good one. Good morning, happy Monday. Just give it a couple more minutes here. Waiting for a couple more people to jump on. And then it's ready to go. Session 2, how to be your own publicist, coming right up. A little sound check for my voice, making sure everyone out there can hear it good. Don't want any technical difficulties on a Monday. That would be terrible. So if you can hear me good, sounds good, say yes, type yes into the live chat. We'll keep the chat open after, answer any questions, of course. Just a couple minutes away. Morning. It's that time. Welcome in, welcome in. Yeah, Monday. It's good Monday morning wake up music. I like it. And kind of got sick of that pastry challenge music after a while. It's good. This is nice. All right. Enough and we can get started. And welcome into How to Be Your Own Publicist Pastry Edition Session 2. Thank you for joining us live if you can. If you're catching us on the replay, that's perfectly all right. It's kind of set up that way, so no matter what. You know, there used to be a really good pastry chef day like Sunday, Monday, or just Monday because you do brunch or whatever the case may be. But we're finding out right now everyone's on such different schedules. There's no one good time. So here we are live. Always excited when you can join live, and great that you can catch the replay and play it over and over and again. We keep these online for at least 6 weeks for you guys to check out, refer back to, work your notes, and have a good time with it. But this week, it's been interesting. Last week, a lot of things have happened, unexpected things. And this week, who knows what will happen, right? And that's what is, you plan for a certain kind of week. We don't know what's going to happen. But one thing that was top of mind for me that I kind of wanted to share, and we talked about this in the other groups as well, that, you know, when those things that come across, you know, your way, like, you know, life stuff that happens, you know, we have our plan. We're working on a lot of plans here and in the other groups. And then everything else happens, right? Like they say, life is what happens when you're making plans. Well, this week, you know, or rather last week, a lot of things came up. Good things, you know, not so great things. And it reminded me, hey, you know, the stuff that we're working on and the time that we have to do it, it's not really unlimited. You know, one of the reasons I believe you guys are here is you know that on some level, but you really want to motivate yourself to get to that next level or have others motivate you, because you know it's a good thing to do. But then as life happens and you get into it, sometimes those not so great things or unexpected things are a great reminder of why you need to double down your efforts and do those things now. That there's no other time but now to do those things. Especially, you know, most of you are entrepreneurial, whether you work for someone else or you've been working for yourself for a long time. There's something to be said for that freedom of expression, that freedom of charting your course, whether it's a side hustle now that you have on that goal. You know, our trajectory is to get outside that circle and get to that goal and step into that reality. And we know that's not going to happen unless we do the work today. And so when those things come up, just have that be a reminder that now is the time, that this is worth the little bit of extra uncomfortability, you know, sometimes pain, that extra effort. And, you know, we'll talk more about that later in terms of PR, but that was top of mind for me. And I wanted to share that with you just to let you know that we all go through those things that as we're trying to get to our goals, kind of distract, question whether timing is right for things. We just have to push through, and remember, push all the way through, right? And like break that board and push all the way through, and you'll see, you know, that effort will be worth it. And, you know, before we jump in, just to thank you for being here on a Monday, spending time through the week, doing the homework, being on the calls. I got to speak to nearly everybody this week. Great calls as always. Really good to see everybody's activity. All of you at a really high level, and have my esteem for continue to work at it. Some of the areas, you know, and everyone's areas of opportunity and difficulty are different. But if we only build toward our strengths, right, we never really get better. We work on our weaknesses. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, you know, sometimes less fun. But as we make those wins there, you know, we just grow and expand and emanate from there. So thank you for investing in you. Nobody cares more about your business than you do. I care to see you all succeed. It's rewarding for me. To me, that's a win-win, to be able to experience that together. But at the end of the day, it's me for my business to understand, what it should be like and what I can contribute and how I can serve. And for all of you chefs as well, what is it that you ultimately want to get up every day and do, and that excites you? That's the things that you want to remind yourself every day. For session 2, we're going to jump in. I got a lot of great screens, but first, the overall outline. This is the Ninja PR plan tactics. We did our outline. We'll review a little bit. And that outline, it's an important piece of paper, has a lot of what we'll need to build our Ninja PR Toolkit. And we'll have a list and we'll gather those materials. And by the end of all of the series, we'll have the media kit. That's that Ninja PR Toolkit. You'll have the outline, the media kit, and an editorial calendar, and a couple other tools you need to start querying editors and getting publicity right away. And we'll talk about, where that publicity will end up. Trade, consumer, online, all good, and you want to kind of blanket those. We'll talk about the pastry chef a little bit. This is the Pastry Edition, so inside and outside the trade. This is sort of a primer on perception and some hurdles that we may have to overcome to, be good with having publicity in all those trade, consumer, online outlets. Consumer media, getting creative. We need to, reinvent all the time and provide those stories so that others can write about it. It's got to come from us. Again, it's all up to you. Online media, this is a little marketing 101, generating mass top of funnel exposure, right? That's all marketing lingo, how to get leads, gather them. This really, we'll talk about how marketing kind of plays hand in hand with the publicity, even though this is really the focus on publicity, but marketing is important. Defining your audience further, what are our goals and objectives with the audience, and, workbook, building that toolkit a little further. What do we need to get that? So if you can, pull out your publicity plan outline. Should look a little something like this. And we filled in some things. Situation overview. I think these are the most difficult areas, right, where people are going to struggle a little bit to really kind of clarify the situation, get your market position to be able to get publicity. So some things to look at here, some notes. While my brand continues to grow, still operate with less impact than my competitors. My brand's much smaller than my competition. All right, that's a fact. Mine too. My company needs to project a larger profile. Another situation that's possible. More visibility with target audiences. I need to promote my unique skill, my experience, and competitive advantages. And this is a lot of chef speak. This is kind of where a lot of chefs will be at. A lot of chefs will live with that one. And a structured and consistent PR plan that broadcasts my brand attributes, right? That tells everybody what I'm all about. I'll put this up on the share screen so we can see it even more closely. There we go. And then audiences, demographic A, demographic B, demographic C. So those are going to vary quite a bit from chef to chef, what those demographics. But I would say broaden who you think your audience is. Some of us, when I talk to individuals, think that our audience is really narrow, and that might be your ideal customer. So let's kind of separate that. Our ideal customer from our audience. So if I have a chocolate business, my audience, one demographic is really people who like chocolate. So who likes chocolate? It could be kids. It looks like everybody, right? Who doesn't like chocolate? To a pastry chef, that's insane, right? You'll meet those people and you're like, I'm going to change you. Have you had Valrhona? Have you had all those good brands? But seriously, you have some broad demographic that you're going to capture with some of that consumer media, because that's really the wide net. And then you have a more specific demographic where you can say, hey, I need, single professionals who make over $120,000 because my chocolate's expensive, right? But it's not just that it's a lifestyle that it fits. It's the kind of gifts that people give. It's the packaging, the whole experience. So those demographics, fill them out. It's really important, all this stuff, to be able to reach out to the right publications. We can, as we talked about, triage our outreach. So initially, we'll have those prime publications that you want to be in. And then as certain topics are declined, no big deal. We'll bring them down the list and filter them down the ladder to other publications. But we want to really start, targeting those that relate to our demographic. And then goals, here's great goals. Achieve the expert status, sell to new audiences, update my image. Those are things that through publicity you can do over time, and you can transition, your image. I think it's important to kind of reinvent yourself to some degree for relevance over time. So if you change too much, it looks like, what are they about, right? How many of our favorite public figures, we really like them, or musicians or actors, until they make that one film and they sold out, right? So changing too much isn't good. But then if you never embrace something new, then you don't grow. So regular incremental changes to update your image. A little T here. Thanks, everybody. So updating your image is important, and just being comfortable with it. Your image should really just be you, with all the stuff that you want to keep personal and all the stuff that you don't care to share, right? So you can create that version of you that's for the public, that's very authentic. Authenticity is more important now than ever. And for budget, everyone was pretty clear. It's pretty much free if we do it right. We said that early, session 1, publicity is free. Well, with, some materials you might need, a lot of those things, like if you have a camera, you don't have a camera, you need a camera, a good camera, hard drives, they're not that expensive. So there's your material costs. So write in a number. It's important to know transportation, if that's something that's needed for you to accomplish, the things that you need to do in terms of go to a specific place, have a photo shoot, or if you're going to bring in a professional photographer, costs will go there. And of course, last but not least, your time. We talked about when you invoice people, writing in your time and giving them a zero invoice. Well, the same thing here for yourself. Write your time in your budget, because it isn't expensive publicity, but it is a lot of time. And, as they say, time is money. And for us, we never have enough of it. So your time, write it in a number amount. You should know whether you're a consultant or not, or whether anyone's paying you currently to do, work by the project or work by the month. You should know your value for the marketplace of what a month is. So you can ask around. We can talk about on our calls. Some of you have that number, and that's a number that you feel comfortable with. You can charge anything you want. The marketplace decides if that's too much or not enough. And if you charge too little, you'll feel it and you'll say, yeah, that was a lot of work for, $1,500. And if you charge too much and no one will hire you, then, you need to come down. So those are things you develop over time. But your measurable targets here, your objectives, again, that's really unique and tied to your demographic. And, in light of the situation overview, this is what will point to what those targets are. If I have a group of kids that I need to appeal to and I don't have the visibility that I need, there's a competitor that's really popular with kids, and my measurable target will be having a print piece where I'm the expert in a magazine that appeals to young people or their parents. Really, depending on the age of the child, we're appealing to the child, so we open up the parents' pocketbooks, and that's sort of how that works, as we know. Strategy, leveraging partnerships and your in-house PR team. 3 strategies we talked about on the calls are probably relevant for everyone on some level. Unless you don't have an in-house PR team, then that's you. Like we said, who's going to do the work, right? It's you. It's you, it's me. We're going to do our own dirty work, right? We get the benefits too from all that hard work. Leverage partnerships. So the competitors that we got to know, the people that we know in our network, it's a good exercise to kind of write out your network sometime and say, hey, here are things that, we can have some mutual collaboration with. Collaborations are excellent for PR. They're a good story to tell, whether it's charity or not. Just doing something interesting with another like-minded group is interesting to the public. It is a story to tell. We talked about what's newsworthy, and central to that is storytelling. So bringing in another chef, another business, a customer, and doing something with the customer that you can profile, having them give testimonials for you. The testimonials that you gave for these classes was really helpful, getting other people to understand that there's value. And again, everyone doesn't jump on things early. You guys are on that front line, on that brave frontier, and okay, I have a little trust, but I'm going to make that, take that leap. So getting someone else to say those things and making sure that on our web pages and that we share those testimonials. So leveraging partnerships, really important, and is ongoing. It's just ongoing. And when other people ask for assistance, I feel inclined to help them because I want to keep that ability to have a collaboration at some point in the future if it's interesting to me. Package your brand stories with photos and share media sources. So number 2, right? Package your own story. If you have the in-house PR team, like the teams that I've experienced, they're really good, but they're taking care of everybody, right? Everybody wants to eat, and their number one customer, right, is the property. And if you're a chef, and I didn't know this for years. It took me a long time, especially working in luxury hotels and doing really, great things with a big team. And really the center of our world was the kitchen and the events and everything that we put on and the room amenities. But then after sitting in P&Ls for, several years, just focusing on the stuff that we're working on, I started to focus on everything, what everybody else was doing, what's going on in laundry, how are we doing over here in purchasing, what's the front desk. And you start to realize that the main business of a hotel is rooms. In fact, in a lot of businesses, the main business isn't the business that they're in. Think of some of the national steakhouse chains, and they're in the business of steak, right? Steak dinners, the experience of going out, you might think. In actuality, a lot of them are in the advertising business where you have the right package, the right placement, and it's really about the image through publicity that they create to make people have the perception this is a really good steakhouse. It may be a okay steakhouse, very average, very consistent, chain to chain, but if you had a chain of 300 steakhouses, and most people that go to a steakhouse want steak and perhaps red wine and maybe a dessert, and you want to pack that full of people for lunch, for dinner. Traditionally, it's dinner, it's a heavier dinner, and some people might be a special occasion if you dress up. So again, in that business, if you look at what we're talking about here, what are their situation overview? Initially it was steakhouses for dinners, for special occasions. We're going to turn it into something. We do that through, advertising and publicity. So your steakhouse might really be the best advertising and PR agency that happens to provide steak dinners. So you may find that in your business too. Is your business really a cookie business, or is it the business of providing gifts through mail order and through the packaging and design and maybe the messaging and custom cards? It's an experiential gift, Again, look at what business you're in. So by packaging your stories like that, you will get people to write about you. If your in-house PR, back to the point, has so many things and so many people to do and take care of, by handing them that story, doing those photo shoots like we talked about, try to do one a month. I think for most of you that's manageable. You're doing the work all the time. Cell phone photos, take always, right? Stop. You'll get in the habit. It's a little annoying sometimes. There's so many good things that I've created that I forget to document it all. And, that's that extra 10% of time and just had heads up play of, oh, yeah, I have to photograph it every time. I have to photograph it. Get someone else to, if you have staff, hey, come here. From now on, you're photographing everything I do, and remind me, hey, did you take a photo, chef? And if you're your own business person, setting up those times when you do the photo and line a few up, that's really helpful. Or mounting a camera. We have a couple on our workstation now for the phones, so we can just kind of, with the flowered hand, chocolatey hand, get some photos for social. But the photos that you want to package for this should be with a nicer camera, and bring that photo shoot mentality. Like on Friday, we're doing the photo shoot. On Thursday, you're staging all your items, and spend that extra time getting good lights. If you have any need for recommendations on lighting, there's some really good small LEDs now that are not that expensive. They are white light, so they are clean and clear, sort of like the picture you're seeing right now. And that will help out depending. If you're in a place with lots of natural light, perfect. That's really the best and probably all you need, and unless it's raining, so you need a backup plan. So you package that story, you go to your in-house PR and you say, hey, here's what we're working on. You remember that thing we made for corporate, or for yourself, you say, hey, this is my new line. I wanted to launch this. If you have that in-house PR and they say, we're not interested, it's just like, they're like any other agency from outside. They just happen to be inside. Their own politics, their own editorial calendar, their own goals. But if they decline on something and you, are working on a property, to me, that's free license to share it with the outside. And if someone on the outside chooses to write about it because you packaged it, you can always bring it to them. You're kind of doing their work for you, for them. And maybe that'll ease on the conflict a little bit. But packaging the story, now you have it. And again, we're going to go down our list of outlets, send that to outlet number 1, the bigger outlet. It's a good story. Wait 2 weeks, we don't hear back. We've got our Excel spread that's tracking that. 2 weeks, we get back to them. Yes, no. Okay, if it's no, let me go to the next one. And then number 3, query the media sources for information on the editorial calendars. And that can go hand in hand with 2. I think the best approach is generate some great stories, share them. Number 2, share them. They say no. Then you say, hey, can I get that editorial calendar? What are you working on next year? What's on the editorial calendar? And see if they will offer you some information or keep you in mind, and the same thing, put that date up there and say, okay, I bugged them. I sent them a story. 2 weeks later, I bugged them. They said no. I asked for editorial calendar, didn't hear back. Then give them 4 weeks, check in again, or send them another story idea. All they can do is say no, and they look at it yes or no. So you can query on your own. And if you have a relationship with a local, newspaper or online blog, you can start small too, and just send some emails and say, hey, these are places I'd like to be in. So, hey, I'm a pastry chef in town, or hey, remember you did that story last year on me. What's on the editorial calendar for next year, right? This is, working on the later part of October. Really, some things are last minute, but asking, editors and writers what they have on the books for next month or, next week isn't really going to work. Their play is really like 3 months out. So they may have some last minute stuff that comes up, but by asking for the later 3-month, requests, they will understand that how it works. And then if something comes up, they can let you know. And then looking further at these strategies, onto the tactics. So yeah, press releases. Once we have our audience, we have our tactic, we create our stories. We'll show you next week the format for a good press release. There's a couple, short form and a longer form. And the press release, even without getting stories, there's a number of bulletin boards and other outlets that you can just post those. So again, once you spend the time developing these materials, you can use it once, try to get that initial goal. But then after that, you can post in a number of places and you can kind of see it run off. And, guys, sometimes the story gets printed and other media outlets just reprint that story because it's floating around. So that's always good for you. And byline articles, every one of you, if you haven't been in Pastry Arts magazine, probably the most active pastry magazine in the United States right now. There's not that many, right? So you may want to just write the 5 down in the world that we want to be in. And on the industry side, just cycle through and plan to be there. And that works great with creating the story, taking the photos, and again, getting in touch with the editors and saying, are you interested in this? Again, all they can say is no. In the past, I would prepackage, 6 photos and about 400 or 500 words on a subject, and I would try to not make that feature a profile, because once you do the profiles are good, and someone wants to come to you and write a story about you as a chef, that's great, but that kind of tells the whole story, doesn't it? And that is sort of preventative of getting continuous stories. So if you can come up with a perspective, a newsworthy perspective that has part of your biography, but then a lot about the work itself and why you're motivated to do it and the story of the work, you really want to be known for your work at the end of the day, or as a brand, both, right? The personality, the work, and it kind of comes together. So sharing those things directly, and trying to byline an article by getting in those local and industry magazines and outlets. More likely you can say, hey, I'd like to write a bit piece sometime. I have this thing. So I think there's some writing in your future just to get some things out. The more you write, the easier it gets. And it really helps, I think, affect your work positively. And then a special event, we know a lot of special events aren't happening, but if we get creative, we can create an event, and really have, like a virtual influencer moment, right? Or you can do something elaborate if what you create ships well. You can send those things out. It'll definitely get attention, but never just send the gift and say, hey, call me, right? Send the gift and then package something tangible for them. And then finally, on our overview, and again, this is important because once you have all of this solid, then we can build our media kit and really focus on where it's going to go. The timeline overview: publication date, delivery date, start date. The 3 stages, and it's backwards, right? I want to put out a story in December at this magazine about blank. I need to get it to them no later than October. Whether you have this lined up or not, this is what you have to get in queue, and then you'll find it'll come. You're building that story piece. You're building the timeline that it needs to be in, and then the start date. So that means I need to start, in July for all my last quarter festive season holiday stuff. And that means the season we're in right now, we need to start now for thinking about, maybe some January stuff, that first of the year, everybody's eating a little cleaner, new year, new look, all those things, but really getting into March and then Easter and then wedding season and then, nicer weather and all those things. So now is the time to start thinking about photos and stories we had from last spring and seeing if we can build some stories around those, get us a head start on photos we already have. So I think you get the picture. These things will lead to what you need to do to build that kit. So that Ninja PR Toolkit, this is kind of the outline. We're saying ninja because in our vernacular, ninja is sort of stealth, right? We're going to not be salesy, but we know that this is all marketing and publicity. So there's an element of being salesy because that's what it is. And you're going to, be really close to completing the publicity plan. I hope so. And then here's the materials that you'll need. You'll need the background and biography, products and services, all your press coverage in the past, industry awards and accolades. You can pick and choose from that, but let's gather it all in one place. Even the formative stuff. It's a good exercise for you to see where you've been and where you're going. Samples, of the work, your best photos, other things you're doing. Some things current, some things can be older that are timeless. Nice variety there. All your main contact information. And then we're going to couple that with a brand package. So logos, secondary logos, if your logo is too big to fit in a square, like a 1x1 square, you may want a secondary logo for those times when it appears with other logos where it's not going to fit in well, or there's certain formats where that bigger rectangle won't work. So sometimes the need for secondary logos or different colors for different aspects of your brand and business. Of course, a business card, not as many business cards we're handing out these days, but it's still kind of important. And then a brand standards page. And so a brand standards page, it's not essential to have an elaborate one. A corporate brand might have like 18 to 40 pages of brand standards, but other people you work with when you start getting published should know that the logos you send them, they can reprint. They should have confidence on what your name and title, what your website is, and how it should all look, how you want it to look, so that they can respect that. Some media outlets, to be honest with you, will just do what they want. And again, we don't control publicity. We don't control them. So if your name appears without your business, you can call them and say, hey, you left out my business name, but it really won't help. The benefit of online is that it's possible, with a good relationship and a lot of tact, you could ask and say, hey, but for the most part, you kind of get what you get. And you just say, what's the old saying? There's no such thing as bad publicity. There's certainly better publicity, but there's no such thing as it being bad to have your name out, even if it seems not what you want or negative. I think really early on, I had one of the first, you remember, Pastry Art and Design magazine was the premier magazine. Pastry Arts is now, Dessert Professional was eventually, but this was a goal because when I was a younger pastry cook, everybody was in Pastry Art and Designs, and we would actually get a physical magazine, go through there and see who's profiled, what are they doing, how's cool, get some new ideas. And I kind of wanted to be a part of that. And the very first time I was in Pastry Arts and Design magazine, they put the wrong photo. And talk about your in-house PR team. They had a group of my photos in a file, and the junior PR person sent the wrong one. And it wasn't a terrible photo, but it wasn't the recipe that was published. Here's a good moment for me. And those moments, you just have to realize that it's okay. And again, the more grief you give the publication about being a mistake. Now, if it's seriously incorrect, they just got it wrong, you can ask them to, print a retraction. Print's the worst because no one's going to read the retraction. It'll appear in some other part of the newspaper at some other time. Online, though, it's good because you really can get some things sort of like trimmed up in that. So brand standards page will help avoid some of those issues. Has all the colors, has some statements about your brand. You can talk about the tone. You can talk about, some of the attributes of your brand, like quality and freshness or best service, or all those things that you want people to know and you want included. So the more a writer knows, they may have that brand package out, the media kit. They may just cut and paste from it. I think you've all seen now, everyone's moving so fast, everything's electronic. And many of the times things that you submit, those stories that I'm suggesting you create, they will just take that verbatim and make it part of their story. So if you think about it, that gives you a lot of power, a ton of influence on how your brand is represented. If you do less of that, then you can expect more of it to be somewhat incorrect and maybe disappointing. So, take the time, figure out what that brand is to you and communicate it, find ways to communicate it. And we'll look at some stylized ways next week. Once we get all the information straight, you can have a one page with some graphics that will really get some attention and differentiate you from other chefs and other sweet businesses trying to do the same, kind of competing for the same media outlets. Trade versus consumer online. We're going to spend some time in the next 3 slides looking at each one individually. And Trade, this is probably the easiest one for us to grab as chefs. Unfortunately, in pastry, there's less of those outlets, but it is a small supportive network, and you can get a lot of great gains from being there. And you can, when you collect those industry clippings, they still are important to consumer and other online, writers for more mass media. It just shows, again, reinforcing that you're an expert. So the publications that serve our industry is the trade media, food and lifestyle magazines that report on pastry topics. There's a couple of those. And then trade magazines that closely relate to being a chef. So we're going to expand a little bit outside of just like the hardcore pastry magazines and say, hey, maybe there's a lifestyle magazine. We had talked about on some calls, Southern Living, Texas Monthly. Every state may have a state magazine. There's a few in the country that aren't directly about food, but they do write about food quite a bit. The trade magazines for that, if it's, we'll see there's some trade magazines that are more like consumer media outlets. So there's that too. That spillover is good for you, right? You're going to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And then some exposure opportunities here, right, is just the general news. What is chef doing? And the new products and personal announcements for the things that are coming out, new menus, seasonal stuff. You should always have something coming. Staff written articles, byline articles. So things, again, try to get something with your name in there. And that doesn't necessarily make you a writer, but it makes you the author of your own story. And everyone knows that's coming from you. But unlike marketing, it's coming from you and being validated by a media source that's saying this story has value, so we put it in our media, in our newspaper, magazine, in our blog. And then case histories, someone getting in, comparing your business to another business in this area, or what did this business solve? For a case history, you want to present a problem. That's why there's so many pivot stories, right? What did Chef A, B, C do about this? They're all in restaurants. They have the same problem. They solved it different ways. This is, interesting. I think the pivot, it's amazing. I keep seeing the pivot article, and it just shows that, one, we're all in the same boat, and two, people are interested in how people are solving those problems and how they can solve those problems. They're looking for some answers there. And then for consumer media, this is something that's may seem harder to get into, but I think this should be a main goal for everybody. The trade stuff will come. Let's knock that down. But the consumer media, we really want to focus on those relationships. So, the newspapers and magazines that you see at the checkout stands at stores, even radio news and talk shows, or, blogs and podcasts, TV, local TV or otherwise, just a broader network to get your story out. And all those people that experience it, they're not going to become customers necessarily. They won't be your clients right off the bat. But again, we will broadcast and let people know and educate them to your amount of expertise and to your brand. So, those things are the things that your audience is watching when it's not working. Sort of for entertainment, but we sneak in a little bit of what we're doing. And, what we do, again, makes people happy. It's probably one of the best things about our industry. The idea that at the end of the day, what we're doing is causing a happiness for people. Some business publications like Entrepreneur and Forbes, those are good. They sort of come across, and they are for their industries, but they have a lot of lifestyle. They figured out a long time ago that it's good marketing for them to figure out the lifestyle of their reader, and they'll come back more. Because if you're just getting the nuts and bolts, information on any industry, it can be a little dull. But here, look at airline magazines. You don't want to read about the airline when you're on a plane, and you'll just read something else. But if they start including, chef stories in there, destinations that you can go on your trip, now those magazines can become really good media outlets as well. So the opportunities and exposure for consumer is pretty obvious. General news, again, just keep thinking like general's good if it's newsworthy. New products, again, what's new is interesting. How-tos, hacks, and tips. There's a lot of hacks out now and tips, but you can see that the home pastry cook, the home baker, is really interested in things that they can do, and sometimes too that points out that they can't do it and makes it more of a motivation to go and buy yours. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling and say like, look, I'll tell you how to make this, and by the time you're done, that person's like, you just come to my house and make it. That's good for consumer media, to kind of give them the information and have them respond to it. All your expert information, every day I want you guys to wake up after you have your lemon water, do your visualization of, your goals. And then as you start to do things, or if you feel hurried, you have to stop and say, no, I'm the expert pastry chef in my field. I'm the best chocolate maker. I'm the best consultant. I am the source, the go-to person for this type of work. I'm the expert. This is how I'm going to do things. Before you send things to the editor, you're going to read that stuff that you did, look at those photos and say, hey, is this at the level? I would challenge you, in our business, we all know it's about standards, and you need to continue to elevate to that standard, and then if you have those sky high standards, you can sometimes accept from other people they're not going to be your standard. And I can tell you the consumer media outlets generally aren't to our pastry chef, our business, our internal standard. But as we understand that we're the expert and present that way, you'll be treated as such, and you'll start to see those articles flow as we build up our name, our business, and our brands through publicity, right? And then the event coverage, again, it's hard right now, but kind of create some events. They can be short, a little online demo, something you can do in your home kitchen, something you can do, on site, or, reach out to clients and give them something for free. Come up with an event and say, if it could be an email event, even, where if they sign up and you capture their, email and name and other business information, you'll give them a recipe every week for festive season, for a full month. So they sign up, and then you send them in that email as an opportunity again to kind of send some more information. And then, opinion articles or columns, those things you see a lot in the consumer space. Online media is like everything, right? In fact, online media is so strong and compelling that we tend to forget about almost everything else, right? So, we had talked about social media platforms and LinkedIn being surprisingly powerful. Well, it's the same thing, don't overlook print. In fact, print has become, kind of something that people seek because it's becoming less and less common. So, that those things, those printed media are still useful. Those magazines, whatever's left, can still be useful. When's the last time someone handed you a magazine and said, hey, look, I was in this magazine? Doesn't happen as much. Online is the big opportunity, but there's so much of it that it's easy to get lost. So, there's some content heavy websites that people look to all the time, and you want to figure out what those are, and they change all the time. Do some Google searches. And then also, the online magazines that may be part of a bigger entity, but only have some exclusive content for online. So, maybe you're not going to get it in Forbes magazine, but you can get it in Forbes.com. Blogs, podcasts, YouTube, there's so much there. I think what it comes down to is, knowing which outlets you want to be in, which ones you like, which little blogs, style, the writer's tone, maybe their brand personality, and kind of aligning with that. And also, work through your network, people that those exposure opportunities include, that exclusivity they can only get online, those online communities. We talked about message boards a few minutes ago, the newsletters and subscription services. There's really so much here to sort through, and I know that can be a little overwhelming. How valuable the outlets are kind of depends on, how they are with your target audience. But again, let's think about our overarching strategy. We've got the need and the desire to be in the press, in the public eye, broadcast our brand and our business year round. So to do that, you need a lot of the little guys too. You need a lot of the outlets that are national to kind of juice up what's regional and make it seem really exciting to motivate the regional writers of the newspaper. And so you have to have this three-pronged approach between trade, consumer, and online to just keep generating. And, you know, again, I know it seems like a lot of work, and some things that will help you. Don't focus on this. You know, we're getting that hard work done right now. We'll make those lists and focus on the work again. It all comes back to the brand again and, you know, being creative. If you do the creative piece first, then when it comes to consumer media, you know, we can get creative. It can be difficult, but think creative first, think open, have fun, you know, have a little fun with the story, develop a voice in your writing, you know, what new products I have, you know, what am I planning to make? We talked about daily activities can be boring. So, you know, which ones are we doing that aren't boring, you know, including, you know, the things that we're doing, but really, again, the why that we're doing, what's the story, you know, not just the, you know, we had to close our restaurant, so we made to-go food. You see some things like that. Sometimes the pivot stories we're reading are like the same, right? The one that's interesting is one like, hey, that's different. Like, you know, everybody's got a to-go window, right? Everyone's doing that. But what are they selling might be more interesting. We've seen a lot more photos. This makes me really happy. You see these top-down photos of to-go containers with some beautiful arranged food in them. So we had talked about in other sessions being able to like design for that, instead of saying, oh, it's a bummer we have to go work in these like to-go containers, and say, okay, I mean, we do this as chefs all the time, like, that's my vessel, right? That's my plate. That's my package. How do I make that cool? Or how do I make the product I put in there so amazing that people don't care if it's in a paper bag, you know, or a plastic bag or a Ziploc or anything. So just remember what your motivation, you know, for designing the product was, you know, what created. Every story, you know, you think about it, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And no matter how complicated the story, you know, how big budget the movie, no matter, you know, how classic the fairy tale is, there's always a beginning that sets up the person who's experiencing that story for what's going to happen. And then middle part's really just kind of expressing the details of how it went down, and how we end it, you know, with finesse really makes a difference in if that's a compelling story. If I take something away from her and I go, oh, that's really cool, or wow, that was a surprise, that's really interesting. So beginning, middle, end, you know, really important in all those things. So how to make things newsworthy that are less newsworthy, tell the story, and make sure that we provide beginning, you know, the middle, and the end for those things. The other topic I get into, and not to spend a lot of time, but it came up on the calls, I thought it was worth a slide anyway. We've got our audience out there, you know, we've got that's a chef on stage there, believe it or not. What is he doing on stage, you know? What are all these guys and gals who are chefs doing on TV anyway, right? Some of them aren't even chefs, right? Like, give me a break. You know, a real chef's too busy to do those things, right? Which is kind of true. Sometimes we had that. And our relationship between publicity and the pastry chef in the United States is kind of developed in an interesting way. You know, in other countries, there's not such a separation, and a lot of countries are much smaller. You know, we're living in one of the bigger countries in the world, where we have this belief that the media, you know, and the mainstream chef is generally not as good as that cool underground chef, you know, that does all the cool stuff, that has that lineage of studying around the world. And there's a lot of value. And remember, guys, like, that's what I come from. I aspired to not be in the mainstream ever, could care less, and just wanted to be the best at the craft that I could be and study from the best. And a lot of those individuals had that opinion too, like, you know, that's TV stuff. And a lot of the TV in the United States food TV is bad, right? And a lot of the stories are so surface level, or they get the facts wrong, and it's not really good for us. So often a lot of those best minds that I was studying with kind of rejected that mainstream, and then you see kind of some average middling pastry chefs gain substantial PR exposure, and you're like, wow, like how does this just don't connect, right? So when we're talking about publicity, it's important that we bridge this gap. I'm not asking anyone or suggesting anyone do anything that they're not comfortable with for themselves or their brand, but I am suggesting that if we don't use the media opportunities that are out there, we're probably going to be much smaller than we maybe want to be. We're going to be less flexible in our business. Do you think that a restaurant business that was forced to close in the last few months, would they be in a different position if they had been written up as the top 10 restaurants in the country and were able to use that to have the same media outlets that publicize their top 10, publicize what they're pivoting, giving links to their new online sales, talking to the chef about their experiences and what's next on the horizon, and how they're not going to, they're tough. They're not going to let this. They're a top 10 chef. They're a top business in the business of being people who make people happy. So if our goal is to make people happy, sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes, we have to get over ourselves. We're looking at a couple generations coming up who don't really have this situational problem. They don't see the difference between marketing themselves, getting publicity, and being underground and cool. There's no underground anymore, right? There's some people working in obscurity. That could be underground. Again, all of us can be perfectly happy in our home kitchens, making exactly what we want for nobody. And I think that's good. We do that all the time here. At the house, we make stuff just for us that we like it our way. But if I want to have a business as a pastry chef, then the reality is we should embrace the media outlets. We're embracing all other aspects of it, but it's something we need to embrace as well. So that's something that I wanted to kind of just express, and not go overboard, but consider there is no selling out as long as it's your story, and the tools that we're talking about here allow you to tell your story your way. So now a little marketing 101. We're going to run a little bit late today, but in 3 sessions, I wanted to give you guys value. And here we have the online media, generate mass top of funnel exposure. Again, that's some marketing mumbo jumbo. What's that funnel? What are we trying to get here? It's some keys to collecting all the marketing elements that are going to go hand in hand with your PR. So, you need to keep it simple. Keeping it simple, whatever we do, super important. I'm going to put all these up here so we can blast through on the brand campaign. We talked about having this. This is the PR part of it and what we're working on right now. Investing in your website. So yeah, your website is, again, that's marketing. But once you get that publicity, people are going to go see the website. That's the next logical thing. You want that call to action, that CTA to be that funnel, right? Social media marketing, again, that's marketing that comes from you, but it needs to go hand in hand. So you get the brand campaign, you get that publicity. It has to serve you by having you repost it, right, in your social. Those collaborations that we talk about, just add to your leads, and that all goes in a funnel. Like we're just adding to that funnel, and then your outbound marketing, just the emails that you send when trade shows and events, start up again, just always being available there. And again, collecting contacts, sharing stories. Collect contacts, more people to share the story with, results are better. More things that we're going to be able to express and share, and more publicity that you're going to get. defining your audience, the goals and objectives for that. We're going to pop these up on the screen. Motivation is action. Direction is activities. We got to get moving with these things. 30% more volume, some things. If you look on this page, we're here in the workbook on page 10. Why do we need to define our goals? I think that's clear. We need those clear goals. We got to write them down. It's not really a goal to me if you don't write it down. What do we want to accomplish? Publicity is a powerful tool. We need that goal. You got to be specific. What do I want to accomplish? And then the internal and external audience, your close network in your building. Again, if you're working in a business, that audience is important too. They often broadcast that to their friends and their networks. Doesn't matter if it's a small group, it's an important group. If it's a group that can broadcast your story and get and lead to publicity. And, reaching those goals, that's the motion, action, direction, activities. Think about that over and over. We need to be moving, like we talked about in the top of this program. You need to be reminded to motivate. We always say, give 110%, right? People say, give 200%. I like the spirit of that. Or another way that's more concrete is if we do 30% more work, those photo shoots we're talking about with a story, we do it 30% more often, do it more frequently, either or both, and 30% new activity, that compounded result is going to be way more than 110%, right? It's going to really collect. And if that's our mentality all the time, we're going to be able to generate a lot of publicity, because that's the extra work, right? Again, it's up to you. It is, I think, I could see myself going through this thinking, there's a lot of work. And sometimes I'm spending that time. I'd like to do, complete a project for a client, or, do something, fun for me, kind of enjoy my life a little bit. But I say, and do that extra, quote, or do that extra 15 minutes of what's needed to get a story handed in. Again, if someone gives you that deadline in media and hey, have it by Wednesday, try to have it by Tuesday. Now, it's not terrible if it ends up being on time, but again, there may be other chefs that are competing for the same space. And if that writer gets several quotes and they finish their story and hand it in, there's less opportunity there. So, motivation, action, and then get that clear direction, write it all down, and then those activities will support it. Let's look at building our kit here, going through the packet and the homework, and we really collect everything that we need for next week. So, all right, I'm going to wrap up in a couple. If you're still with me, here we go. Keep these all on a hard drive. This is what I want you to get together for next week. And you have that plan finished. Please finish the outline so we can build our media kit for our last, can't believe it'll already be 3 sessions next week, but we're going to get this done and get our editorial calendar. And it all starts with this. Gather all the media mentions that you've ever had, clippings, those things, links, whatever you need. Take photos if they're physical. And I mean, go as far back as you can. Anything you're proud of, anything you thought was great. Make a fact sheet. And a fact sheet, just keep it simple. Just a bullet point list of everything about your current brand, all those attributes, and we can sort through and delete some and refresh some if we need to. Again, photos of your work. Should we have plenty of those? Sort through into different folders. Number 1, these are things I want to publish, I'm proud of. Maybe there'll be some photos you want to recreate. So get those photos refreshed and sort through the quality photos. We want to make sure that we have all high resolution photos. So those phone shots should be in a separate folder, unless you have a great phone and it's on a high setting. But we need to examine what we send to people that have to be definitely high resolution. So if you have any questions on our calls this week, let me know what formats you're working in, making sure there are things that we can submit that they could just go ahead and publish. Your biography, if you haven't visited that in a while, refresh it. And taking, your why and looking at your biography. If your biography just reads, here's a chef and they've been cooking since they were 4, and then they did this, and it comes sort of off like a resume. We really should start with like our mission and something interesting that grabs a reader, because again, we're talking about publicity. It's different than appealing to a customer. It's different than trying to get someone to hire you for something. It's really what's appealing, all the different things about you, what's interesting, why read about this chef and not another. So, and then a good headshot, something recent, something that you like. If you don't like it, it's time for a new photo shoot, redo it. Logos, again, all the logos in high res and different formats. If you have various logos, if you don't have a logo, consider, there's a lot of places you can go online, do one of those logo generators, and just do a logo for your person, your name as a chef. Work with your initials sometimes is cool. But you should have something to represent you, that you can, if you do some charitable function, your logo should go up there with the companies that are, contributing as well. And then anything, if you look on page 3, anything from your notes that you think that you need to include, that you want to include, that's going to be really important to share with the media. Those things are super important. So we got there. Session 2 come to a close. I know it's a lot of information, guys. I wanted to pack this full of value for you guys, but I want you to walk away again with a media kit that's going to get you more publicity than you had. So thank you. Put the work in. Book your calls early. We've got quite a few people doing the classes right now. So, I kind of book first come, first serve. I do want to talk to you guys. This is more of an advanced class. It's a critical week to kind of get that media kit put together and then work on that editorial calendar, know who we're sending things out to, and get the most out of this. I absolutely respect you guys for putting in the extra effort here on a Monday. And, we're out. Be well and talk to everyone soon.